Hey there, welcome to the Focus Podcast with Taralee. This is the place where we talk about real life, real relationships, and how to grow through it all. If you're looking for simple mindset shifts, better communication, and deeper connections, you're in the right spot. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Focus Podcast. I'm Taralee, and if you're new here, welcome. And if you've been here before, I'm really glad you're back. Today, we're talking about something that shows up every single year like clockwork. January. You've probably heard it called Divorce Month. And no, that's not just a catchy headline or a scare tactic. It's a documented pattern that divorce attorneys, therapists, and marriage coaches see year after year after year. But what I want to talk about today isn't the statistic. It's why January feels so impossibly heavy for relationships. Why so many couples who made it through December suddenly can't make it through January. And more importantly, what actually helps couples before they make decisions they can't undo. So if January has you questioning everything right now, if you're lying awake wondering if this is really the end, and if you're terrified of staying but equally terrified of leaving, this episode is for you. Okay, so let me paint a picture for you. Most couples don't fall apart in December. They survive December. Think about it. November and December are full of noise. Thanksgiving, Christmas, holiday parties, school programs, family gatherings, shopping, cooking, wrapping, planning, all of it. You're busy, you're distracted, you're focused on logistics, the kids, the schedules, the extended family dynamics. And when you're that busy, there's no space to feel what's really happening in your marriage. So instead of addressing what's not working, you step over it again and again and again. And you tell yourself, I'll deal with this after the holidays, or now is not the time, or let's just get through Christmas for the kids. And that works temporarily. It's like putting a blanket over a smoke alarm. You can't hear it anymore, but the fire is still burning. But then January comes, and the noise fades, and the distractions disappear. The house is quiet again, and suddenly you can feel everything that you've been avoiding. The distance, the resentment, the loneliness, and the fact that you're living in the same house but feel completely alone. And that's when people mistake emotional awareness for truth. They finally feel the full weight of what's been building for months, maybe years even, and they think this must mean the marriage is over. Maybe it feels this bad, and because it feels this bad, it must be beyond saving. But here's what I need you to understand. The feeling of heavy doesn't mean that something's broken beyond repair. It often means that something has been ignored for too long, and there's a massive difference between those two things. Here's the part most people don't talk about. Clarity is only helpful if you know how to interpret it. Without a framework, clarity turns into panic. Now, let me explain what I mean. When January hits and you finally feel the full weight of your marriage crisis, your mind starts racing. Is this it? Have we grown apart? Am I wasting my life? What if this never changes? And how much longer can I live like this? When your nervous system gets activated like that, when you're in full flight or fight mode, your brain doesn't look for growth. And it doesn't even look for repair. It looks for escape. And because escape promises relief, when you're in pain, relief sounds really, really good. And divorce often feels like the answer. Not because it solves the problem, but because it promises an end to the discomfort. But discomfort isn't the same thing as danger. And discomfort doesn't require permanent decisions. It requires understanding. Let me give you an example. If you wake up one morning with chest pain, your immediate thought might be, I'm having a heart attack. So you rush to the ER. They run tests, and it turns out it's not a heart attack, it's severe acid reflux. It's still painful, it's still real, but not life-threatening. And more importantly, it's treatable. Now, imagine if you'd made major life decisions based on that initial panic. My heart is failing. I need to quit my job. I need to sell my house. I need to move across the country and start over. You'd look back later and think, thank heavens I didn't do that. I just needed to understand what was actually happening. That's what happens in January for so many couples. They feel the pain, and the pain is real, but they don't have a framework to understand what's causing it. So they jump to, this marriage is over, when the truth might be, this marriage is starving and I don't know how to feed it. And those two are completely different problems with two completely different solutions. So what do most couples do when they hit crisis in January? They start consuming advice. They Google how to save a marriage. They listen to podcasts. They read articles. They watch YouTube videos. They ask friends. And they get bombarded with well-meaning but conflicting advice. Communicate more, set better boundaries, try date nights, go to therapy, read the books, read that book, read this book. Just be more patient. Stop being a doormat. Love them harder. Focus on yourself. And now, on top of feeling like your marriage is falling apart, you're completely overwhelmed and confused about what to do first. Because advice without discernment creates paralysis. You're not only struggling, you're confused about which direction to move. And here's the problem with most marriage advice. It treats everyone the same. It assumes that what worked for one couple will work for yours. It gives you tools without teaching you how or when to use them. It's like handing someone a toolbox and saying, here, fix your house, without telling them which tool to use for which problem. The hammer is great for nails, but it's terrible for screws. Communication techniques are great when you have emotional safety, but they're terrible when you're in crisis mode and your nervous system is activated. Date nights are great when there's connection, but they're terrible when there's resentment and you can barely stand to be in the same room. Advice treats everyone the same, but frameworks teach you how to think, and that's the difference between reacting and responding. That's the difference between spinning in circles and actually making progress. My dad used to say something that I didn't fully understand until I started doing this work. What you focus on expands. And when I was younger, I thought it was just motivational stuff, but it's not. It's neurological. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system, your RAS for short. Its job is to filter information because every single second you're bombarded with millions of data points and sounds, lights, sensations, thoughts. Your brain can't process all of it. So your RAS decides what gets through based on what you're focusing on. So here's an example. Have you ever decided you wanted to buy a certain car? Let's say a red Honda Civic. And suddenly you see red Honda Civics everywhere. They were always there, but your brain is now looking for them, so it sees them. The same thing happens in your marriage. When you focus on what's wrong, what's missing, what your partner isn't doing, what they said that hurt you, how they let you down, your brain gathers more evidence to support that narrative. Not because it's the whole truth, but because attention directs perception. This is why two people can live in the same marriage and experience it completely differently. One person is focused on all the ways they're trying, and their partner isn't. The other person is focused on all the ways they're criticized and nothing they do is good enough. Both are gathering evidence. Both feel justified and both feel like the victim. But neither one of them sees the full picture. And this is the vicious cycle that destroys marriages. And it's why shifting focus intentionally changes everything. Not because you're pretending things are fine, not because you're ignoring the real problems, but because you're choosing to see the whole picture instead of just the part that confirms your fear. This is exactly why I created the focus framework, not as a quick fix, not as therapy, but as a filter, a way to slow the moment down and ask better questions. because most couples in crisis are operating at 100 miles an hour, reacting, defending, attacking, shutting down, and you can't make good decisions at that speed. So focus helps you slow down and see what's actually happening. Here's how it works. F is for facts first. What actually happened? Not the story that your brain is telling you, and not the meaning that you're attaching to it, just the facts. For example, the fact is that my spouse came home from work and went straight to their phone. The story that we tell ourselves is that they don't care about me. They'd rather scroll than connect. I'm not a priority. Do you see the difference? The fact is neutral. The story creates the pain. And when you can separate the two, you take back your power. O is for own your thoughts. This is the shift that changes everything. Your feelings aren't caused by your spouse, your circumstances, or your situation. Your feelings are created by your thoughts about those things. I know that can feel really frustrating at first because it means you can't blame anyone else for how you feel. But it's also the most empowering truth you will ever learn. Because if your thoughts create your feelings, then you can change your feelings by changing your thoughts. Not by pretending and not by toxic positivity, but by intentionally choosing what you want to focus on. Next, we have C is choose your feelings. Now, this doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending you're not hurt. It means learning how to process emotions instead of reacting from them. You can feel anxious without spiraling. You can feel hurt without attacking. You can feel angry without shutting down. This is emotional regulation at its best, and it's the skill that saves marriages. And then U is to understand your actions. When you feel anxious, what do you do? When you feel rejected, what do you do? When you feel lonely, what do you do? Because your actions are the bridge between your intentional world and your results. And most of us have default actions we don't even realize we're taking. Maybe you feel anxious. When you feel anxious, you overfunction or you try to control everything. Maybe when you feel rejected, you withdraw or you shut down emotionally. Maybe when you feel lonely, you criticize your spouse for not being there. None of these are bad per se, they're just patterns. But if they're not creating the results you want, we need to understand them so that we can change them. Because S is shape your results. New thoughts create new feelings, which lead to new actions that ultimately create new results. This is the recipe. And when couples learn this framework, something shifts. They stop blaming each other. They start taking responsibility for their own patterns, and they rebuild emotional safety. They can create connection from the inside out, not because they learn to communicate better, but because they learn to think differently. Okay, here's the truth that I want to say gently but very clearly. Divorce doesn't automatically teach you how to communicate. It doesn't regulate your emotions. It doesn't heal your attachment wounds. It doesn't teach you conflict repair. If the pattern isn't examined, it repeats. I've worked with people who've been divorced 2 or 3 times, and they keep finding themselves in the same dynamics. Because the problem wasn't the person that they married. The problem was the skills that they never learned. Now, I'm not saying that you should stay in your marriage no matter what. That's not what this is about. Some marriages shouldn't be saved. Some relationships are truly toxic or abusive or beyond repair. But most marriages that end in January aren't ending because they're toxic. They're ending because 2 good people didn't know how to build the foundations they were never taught. And that breaks my heart because with the right framework, with the right support, and with the right skills, most of these marriages could be saved. And not just saved, but transformed. Transformed into something stronger and deeper and more resilient than before. But you can't do that from a place of panic. You can't do that from a place of urgency. You have to decide from clarity instead of from fear. So if January has you questioning your marriage right now, I want you to hear this. You don't have to decide anything today, but you do deserve a better filter. You deserve to understand what's actually happening, not just the symptoms, but the root cause. That's why I created a 15-minute training video. In it, I explain why couples feel stuck even after counseling. I explain what actually changes relationship dynamics. I explain 5 foundations that every marriage needs that nobody ever taught you, and how just one person shifting the pattern can create movement for both. You can watch it through the link in the show notes or at TaraLeeEddington.com. January doesn't have to be the month that everything ends. It can be the month that you finally understand what's been happening and what's actually possible. Your love isn't dead, it might just be dormant, and dormant things can be reawakened. So thank you for being here. Thanks for trusting me with your time and with your story, and I will talk to you next week. Thanks for hanging out with me today on the Focus Podcast. If something stood out or helped you in some way, feel free to share it or leave a quick review. It means a lot. Keep showing up, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next episode.